Alright everyone, welcome to Wednesday's video on Celtic AM. The team are back this weekend. We face Livingston on Sunday. It's a big game. They're all going to be big games between now and the end of the season. But before we even get to the weekend, we've got a pretty big day tomorrow, Thursday, when we find out what's going to happen with Brendan Rodgers and this potential ban hanging over his head. Now, he's up in front of the SFA for a hearing over what they call a notice of complaint that he was issued at the start of the month after our defeat at Tynecastle. He said some things after that game. And I'll be honest, this has kind of been going on, obviously, basically the whole of March. And I've kind of looked at it and had a rough idea what's going on, but never properly looked into exactly, what is happening here, what could happen on Thursday and what is likely to happen on Thursday. So I thought we could take today's video to do just that. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll have learned as much as me. Okay, so first of all, this is what we know from the disciplinary updates section of the SFA's website. This little box with, it looks like it's got a lot of information. It kind of has the bare minimum, to be honest. So we know that this notice of complaint is from Wednesday the 6th of March, 3 days after our defeat to Hearts at Tynecastle, and Brendan Rodgers has been served a notice of complaint by the SFA's compliance officer. That's a guy called Martin Black these days, for allegedly breaching disciplinary rule 72. And as you can see, it's extremely wordy, but it comes down to Rodgers criticising match officials in a way that indicated incompetence on their part. So what did he actually say? Let's just remind ourselves. This was to the written and broadcast media right after the game at Tynecastle. He said, "I try to respect decisions and give the benefit of the doubt, but I think when I see that level of incompetence, that's the only word I can use, then that makes me worry for the game. In such a tight title race, that can make the difference. VAR is not the problem here, that's clear, it's competence." Now, as you surely won't need reminding, he was referring to a couple of decisions that went against us in that game at Tynecastle. The red card shown to Hyunjin Yang early on in that game, and the penalty given against us for a handball by Tomoki Iwata just before half-time. Both of those incidents and the eventual decisions that were given weren't given originally by the on-field referee Don Robertson. They went to VAR, and John Beaton, who was in charge of VAR that day, and he recommended on-field reviews, I think, for both, and Yang was upgraded from a yellow to a red, and the penalty was given against Iwata. I'm not really wanting to go into either of those decisions. We did that. They're kind of over and done with, but that's what Brendan Rodgers was unhappy about. And clearly in, that quote there, he used the word incompetence and also competence at the end. So it's covered twice there. Pretty sure he would have said similar things in interviews with Sky Sports, BBC, possibly even Celtic TV as well. He also mentioned John Beaton by name in at least one kind of post-match interview. That's unlikely to have helped his case. So he's clearly fallen foul of that rule that we kind of had on screen earlier. That's pretty kind of open and shut case regarding that. But the thing I want to look at now is, what is the likely punishment going to be for Brendan Rodgers tomorrow? Now, if we look at and wait for this, the SFA's Judicial Panel Protocol 2023-24, the penalty for a member of staff being found guilty of breaking that rule, 72, can range from a 2 to a 20 match suspension. Now, those things at the top there, LE, MR and TE, they stand for lower end, mid-range and top end. And obviously you've got the maximum punishment there on the right-hand side. So The key bit there is down the page, team staff and players, and as I say, the ban could range from 2 games to 20 matches. Celtic could also be fined from £1,000 to a maximum of £100,000. Clearly, Rodgers is not going to get a 20-match ban here. I'm going to look very daft when they dish out a 20-match ban and we next see him in the dugout in like November or something like that. But that obviously isn't going to happen. So it's going to be on the lower end of the scale. But even a 2-match ban would see him out of Livingston this weekend and probably more crucially Ibrox a week later. So that's why there's a lot of chat about this at a crucial stage of the season. Now, I searched for Rule 72 in that on that SFA disciplinary page, and a couple of recent-ish results came up. Former Albion Rovers manager Brian Reid 2 years ago, and former Hibs player Paul McGinn as well. Now, Reid's comments certainly went further than Brendan Rodgers. He seemed to suggest officials had it in for his team at that stage. Definitely strayed into the bias area where Brendan Rodgers, clearly didn't. I've tried searching to actually find out what the final verdict was regarding Reid's citing, and unsurprisingly, perhaps I didn't come across anything. The coverage of Albion Rovers isn't quite as extensive as Celtic, so I don't actually know how that one ended up. McGinn's comments were ironically about John Beaton after a match against Celtic, and it was the 2021 League Cup final, and it's centred around the winning goal we scored, that brilliant, quick Tom Rogic free kick that Kyogo leapt onto and lobbed over the goalkeeper. McGinn called Beaton inept for allowing a quick free kick to be taken, and he said that the same wouldn't have been allowed at the other end of the pitch for a Hibs attack. Again, very clearly straying into the area of bias where Brendan Rodgers didn't. For me, a more severe kind of comment to make than what Rodgers said. And McGinn got a 2-match ban for that. Now, he's obviously a player, not a manager, so I'm guessing it's slightly different, although they are all under that one category there on that sheet that I showed you. So that's as far as the SFA site goes back, but obviously you can Google some other cases, and there's a couple I just want to bring to your attention. You may be wondering, why is he talking about Paul McGinn and Brian Reid and people like that, but I do think it's interesting to see how previous cases have gone to get a feeling for how tomorrow might go. Brian Rice was the manager of Hamilton Accies in 2021 when he went mad at Crawford Allen. You may well remember these comments because they went pretty viral. It was the one where he said decisions were going against his side because they were, quote, effing Hamilton. And he didn't say effing. He fell foul of Rule 72, which is the same as Rodgers, and Rule 77 as well. That's centred around not acting in an improper way. He got a 4-match ban. 2 of those were suspended, so he missed 2 matches immediately, and then that was basically it at that stage. Again, that was veering into the bias stuff. Again, Brendan Rodgers didn't actually do that. He just questioned the competence of the official rather than questioning the official being out to get Celtic or anything like that. There is a difference there. Now, the final one that I think is the most interesting case, 2019, our former defender Gary Caldwell, manager of Partick Thistle, at that point was cited for making some comments after a 1-1 draw against Falkirk. He criticised referee Andrew Dallas, saying, "We should have won, but for another crazy decision. It's important for people's lives they get these decisions right. I'm not saying they can be perfect, but I think the way they go about it afterwards, the arrogance they show isn't great." Now, that for me is the closest out of all the cases to what Brendan Rodgers actually said. Now, Caldwell was critical of the referee's performance, and obviously he called Andrew Dallas arrogant as well for his kind of behaviour after the game. He got an immediate 1-game suspension with an additional match suspended until the end of the 2018-2019 season, which was the year that occurred in. So having seen that and, comparing it to what Brendan Rodgers said, I reckon this is the way Thursday's hearing is likely to go. Obviously, you never properly know what direction things will head. Does either party have an ace up their sleeve, etc.? Will they take things into account, like the fact that Brendan Rodgers has never been in this position before, in his time in Scotland certainly, or the fact that he was quite measured in the Hearts media room after that game. It wasn't like he was out of control. He was clearly frustrated and probably angry as well, but it wasn't a rant. I don't know if they take stuff like that into account. But just looking at that Caldwell example alone, I would guess we're probably going to get something pretty similar tomorrow. And if I had to, say what I think will happen, I think we could possibly be looking at a 2-match ban, but with one of those games suspended. So that would mean Brendan Rodgers wouldn't be in the dugout for the game against Livingston on Sunday, but he would be for Ibrox a week later. Now, that is a kind of reiterate, I've not heard anything. That's not like ITK stuff that I'm saying there. It's just me looking at previous cases and, wondering if that's the way things will go. I mean, he could get a 2-match ban and miss both games in the dugout. He could get a 2-match ban, but both of them are suspended. These are all options that are open, but just from that Caldwell example, which I would say is pretty similar, I feel like anything more than a kind of immediate 1-match ban would be pretty harsh, I would say, all things considered. You may have some other questions, like why is it taking so long for this hearing? The game was the best part of 4 weeks ago now at this stage. The Yang stuff was sorted out within a couple of days, so why are we waiting this long for the Brendan Rodgers stuff? The simple answer is that's just the way these tribunals work. It was the same with all of the ones I've mentioned on this video, Caldwell, Rice, McGinn, etc. It's different to a fast-track appeal, which was the situation with Yang, and they, I think, put a bit of time between the incident and the hearing to take the heat out of the situation and also allow people to kind of build a proper case. So that's the reasoning there. There's a whole other debate to be had over why it takes so long, but that is the reason. What time will we know? Well, the hearing will take place between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Thursday, so anytime really. Can Celtic appeal the verdict? I'm not 100% sure on this, but there's certainly no mention of appeals on any of the cases that I've mentioned in this video. So I would say no. I would say it's just a case of finding out what the situation is and taking it from there. And what will the fallout be? That may be your big questions. There's been so much chat about missing VAR tapes and that potentially being the reason for Crawford Allen leaving and votes of no confidence in him, and Celtic readying themselves for a big attack on Thursday. The truth is that we don't know whether we'll get that or whether we'll just get a really short statement from the club acknowledging and telling supporters what the verdict has been. We won't know until Thursday, but I think it's going to be interesting either way. By the way, a final thing I want to bring you, Don Robertson is actually going to be refereeing us on Sunday. You couldn't really write it. He is the man in the middle for our trip to Livingston. Added to that, John Beaton is at Partick Thistle versus Inverness in the Championship, thankfully. VAR is going to be Alan Muir. But yeah, interesting times ahead. If you've got any other kind of questions about this whole disciplinary stuff, please feel free to fire them in the comments and I'll either reply to you or build them into tomorrow's video. As I say, the hearing will be tomorrow, Thursday that is, so it's not today or anything, but I just thought it was worth getting everything out there and really properly understanding what could potentially happen there. It's going to be interesting.